So welcome back to 505's Battle of Ages. I've downloaded Dragon Ball Z Xenoverse and I thought, well, we could go into a fighting game. It seemed, I had no idea it was entirely for like kids, the way that it's kind of like played out like time savers and time travelers and things like that. I wanted to show you the campaign on this game. The campaign is quite good. Now, when we're doing online battles, you start off with a 20-second time frame to be able to start a tactic or to see where your first target is going to be. On the campaign, you don't get that kind of option. You have as long as you like. As you can see, there's no battle begins in 20 seconds above the clock, above where the 3 stars are. There are 3 camps here, and given the look of this wall, they are medieval age and pretty advanced. And I only have 1 healing, 1 plague of locusts, and 1 lightning bolt. So the idea is going to be strike this guy. That's brought these guys out. So it's only got 2 horses straight away because it's cavalry. And then, well, I've only got 2 horses. I know I have at least about 5 of them. I'm going to see where I can place somebody. So I can place troop here. So I've got plenty of those to spare. So send them in. So it's literally just those 2 horses. Okay. We'll see what we trigger over here. So it's just literally 2 horses in their defense, nothing more, nothing less, which means I need to destroy that. That didn't do very much. So that horse is going to get destroyed. Cleopatra. Cleopatra. Those guys are stupid. That was unfortunate, but obviously, as you can tell, that was that. So anyway, we are currently downloading a 2024 game that was brought out on the that came about on the 31st of August. So the game is probably 4 weeks old, and it's the latest game. It's called The First Descendant. The storyline looks quite good, and everything else looks quite good. So we're going to jump into that later and have a look, see what the game's about. It is a free game. It's season or episode 1. I'm guessing it's going to have in-app purchases. Again, the Dragon Ball Z Xenoverse had terms and conditions and privacy policies attached to it, which made it more of a safer game to download for me personally, because you don't really want to give anything without terms and conditions in with these games. Anything. Same with the PlayStation licenses and stuff like that. Although I was looking at, I have a spare PlayStation 4 board, and given the fact I have a spare PS4 board, I had a look, and around where is it? Down by the bottom where the USB ports are at the front of the console, there seems to be some holes to mount some chips and some microchips. Now, I don't know if that's how they make the PS4 Pro, because I know the PS4 Pro has two 512s worth of RAM separated, but I don't know if I can install them onto this board to increase the graphics chipset. Well, that is interesting. So I've contacted somebody on the internet from one of the reels that I've watched on my Facebook, and generally he does these repairs and mods to consoles, like jumping wires and stuff like that, stuff that don't work. He kind of uses all correct equipment like oscillators and stuff like that, and frequency modulators and stuff to monitor them. I've sent him a question asking what all these parts are for, and whether he'd be interested in attempting to upgrade the RAM and possibly find the RAM chips to put in this, and if any RAM chips can be put in on the board, because I'm guessing that, though to be fair, the PS4 Pro does have an extra HDMI port, and I'm just trying to wonder if there are any traces which there isn't, that could do the same thing. Because I got to thinking, I wonder if like the modern fat PlayStation control boards have these issues, not have these issues, but have these ports that are open for their later consoles later on in like pre-development. So when they develop the board, they put all these things on them and they run it to maximum to see what they can do with it, and then later on release two different console versions, such as the Slim and the Thing. Because did you know, when the original engine was built for a Ford Cosworth, the original engine for a Ford Cosworth was built as a single cylinder engine. They got all the schematics for the cylinders, the flywheel, and all they did then is multiplied it by the times of how many cylinders and how much power they wanted to create. And I don't know if computer consoles work exactly the same way, so when they develop these things. But there's a lot of gold holes when you hold it up to a light bulb. There's a lot of holes in there where things can be added to your board. So could you add something to the board? And I also wonder if there's a processing chip that you could place in. So therefore you could take the old processing PlayStation chip out and then install one that has more cores, threads, better transfer and things like that, but yet somehow keep the programming and the functionality of the PlayStation. Not all of it is going to be on the hard drive, because you can completely format a hard drive. Oh yeah, that made me jump. You can completely format a hard drive and then put all these things in. But upon looking at the PlayStation board, I was thinking, why did PlayStation limit themselves? So these RAM chips that go around the circuit board, that I've literally just learned and I've just found out about, if these RAM chips go around the edge, because apparently the RAM chips are for graphics, and when I play Resident Evil 3 on the current console I'm playing on, the graphics start to get a little bit glitchy. And now I have changed the heatsink, cooling fan. They still have all their thermal pads on, everything like that inside the console, but I'm not too sure of what's actually going on. So it's mainly when I'm playing some really high definition games, and when the enemy or the target is in the distance. Like for example, when you're going down to the cafe on the opening scenes, once you get out of the city, once you get into the city area of Resident Evil, as the game starts after you've met Carlos, you go down a set of steps, there's a junction box, and then there's a few enemies at the bottom. You fire at the enemies from a distance, but they seem to be flickering. Like, not the screen or the graphics flickering, it seems to be more like the movement is flickering. So I was thinking to myself, why don't they make computer consoles the same way as they make a PC? For example, where you can insert RAM and take RAM out. Now I've looked online, and apparently according to the Sony PlayStation website, they built the console to have the maximum amount of RAM available, which is 8 gigabytes. Now I wanted to upgrade to 16 gigabytes of RAM for visual distribution and all the stuff that it's supposed to do. But it's the processor that can't handle it. So the processor won't be able to process it quick enough. So would you have to change the processor and change the RAM chips? But what I don't get is, you know, when you buy these Maplins kits or anything from online and you build your own little, like when I was making a Bluetooth radio the other day with some light syncs, and they have like chipsets where you can place the chip in and remove the chip out. So you can put the chip in and take the chip out, like you can just same as a watch battery or normal RAM set inside a PC. But what I don't quite understand is, why don't they do this with games consoles? Maybe because it ruins durability and reliability, because let's face it, one that's soldered all the way in is going to be more reliable. No word of a lie, because it's got less moving parts. But if they put good quality placeholders in, as in like chip holders, I'm going to call them chip holders, I don't know what they're properly called, but then you could literally take your 1 gig out, put a 2 gig in, and upgrade your RAM sticks and upgrade your console. Because PC gaming is far more effective than console gaming. Everybody knows that, but why do we keep spending? A computer console is relatively cheaper than a PC console. Not only just to run, because it's got better probably energy efficiency, but also like game wise, streaming wise, things like that. Graphics card wise, because you have the impulse to upgrade the graphics card. But I just don't know why PlayStation would like not include any chipsets for this board. And I think that on this board somewhere there's a couple of spaces for some capacitor caps, like capped capacitors, such as these little, what are these called? I ain't got a magnifying glass on me, but a U4220 CCM caps. There seems to be 1, 2, 3 spaces for those caps. a large square for a microchip of some kind, and then even bigger. So I don't know if you could possibly upgrade this to minus the HDMI port and minus from where the USB ports go. I wonder if you can update the RAM, because I was watching a Tektronix fix on YouTube about a year ago, and they were talking about the difference between the PS4 Slim and the PS4 Pro. Is the PS4 original and the PS4 Slim only have 8 gig of RAM, but then they have a separate gig on two 512s inserts that handle things that they can run more applications at once without the computer slowing down or freezing. So therefore I'm wondering, so I've contacted a guy online who his little side thing is basically, apparently what he does for a living is he generates hardware and makes hardware. But what he does on like his side thing is just basically making educational YouTube videos on following traces, what a computer console is, how these things work for people that don't quite understand technology, and those who are into retro gaming or have a lot of electronical devices or are having faults, and then can help you, point you in the direction of what's wrong with it and where to go to get them fixed. But I'm wondering if he knows of anything that you can add to the board, because there is a lot of empty space around the CMOS battery. At the front of it, you've got sort of like a large area where you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 caps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 like little square transistors or resistors, I don't know what they're called, and then you've got some R18D chips and an R68X chip, and you've got four of the R18D chips, and then one R6XD chip, and then 2 capacitors, and then another 2. But around all of those things there's a blank spot, and you have 4 little microchips, and I can't see what they are without a magnifying glass or anything. But then there's a lot of contacts and pinholes. There's like, to be able to put another set of these caps in by the looks of it, and not RAM, these capacitors or transistors, I don't quite know what they're called. And then you've got like an IR9, an IR01 in the areas, but they look like, why would they have the holes around the outside? Why wouldn't they take that off and then put whatever goes around it? So is there something bigger that can fit on here? Or originally, what was this board used for? This board might never have ever been intended to be a PlayStation at some point, and Sony just bought the patent to the board and went, right, okay, we'll produce the board and put all our bits in it, and there we go, we've got a PlayStation. But I really do wonder what it is actually for. I mean, the serial board is SAB001 1-893-625-21 is the serial number of the board. So if you'd like to have a look at the serial number of that board and then take a look for yourself, you'll see at the top where the CMOS battery clips in, where the CMOS battery clips in, there would be some extra chips, RAM or anything like that. So therefore, could you upgrade your PS4 standard original game console to a PS4 Pro minus the extra HDMI port? And if you could possibly piggyback off the traces to put an extra HDMI port in if you really wanted to, I suppose. But I'm not too sure how reliable that would be, although to be fair, you don't really want it for power, for example. and then you leave the original, no, USB port on the bottom. So I suppose you could take out, yeah. Let's have a look at the USB port traces. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus 4. There's 10 traces plus 2 pinholes. So if there was 10 trace holes around there, which there isn't, so I don't think you're going to be able to put a new USB port on there onto the board unless you literally just jumper wired ones from the back over the top of the console, looped it into some of these holes that are in there, and then widened 2 holes slightly to be able to get the pins through to secure it into place. The only problem is then, would you have to change anything to the power supply or the power issue? So a power distribution chip or anything like that that distributes power. It's really interesting. I just thought I'd share that with you because you never know. And I was looking at the RSX chip the other day, and I was watching the same video, and I was thinking maybe on the PS3s where the RSX chips fail, I call it the RSX chips, I'll just call it a processor. Where the processors failed due to it being cracked over overheating because of rubbish lead or lead-free solder or whatever they've been using to create these things cheaply. But then again, any metal, once it's exposed to heat, and gets a knock and breaks. I mean, this is educational that I've learned from a simple Facebook reel. Yeah, but anyway, is why I know it'd be labor intensive and cost a lot of money. I mean, a brand new RSX chip costs $400. You can get an upgradable from Alibaba for $11.99. If you get the upgradable from AliExpress, $11.99, is it going to be reliable? Plus it's come from China. Is it going to have any spyware in it? So you can actually get them, but apparently it's the labor intensity of removing the freaking processor. But if PlayStation know of these issues, why don't they create a processor socket where the processor can be removed and replaced? One, it will speed things up for them in their factory, and two, it will help out people thinking. But I reckon it's size, weight and convenience, because a PlayStation is an aesthetic thing, isn't it? It's not like a PC console where it's just a huge blob of plastic and metal sitting in the corner of your room. But it would make more sense if that would be the issue. I'm surprised PlayStation didn't change a socket insert or anything like that once they started getting all the YLODs and the YLOD. To be fair, for the chipset, I mean, the PlayStation was chunky enough. I don't think like a chipset holder is going to make that much difference, to be fair. But it does make things thingy, and then you could literally have like a console that is upgradable with a microchip you can buy directly from Sony. So technically you would never have to buy a brand new whole complete console. Financially wise, I don't know if it would be marketed or profitable idea, because instead of selling brand new consoles every 5-10 years, you'd be selling new microchips every 5-10 years. So you'd be selling a new graphics card, you'd be selling a new processor, and then some RAM that you can upgrade yourself. But they'll all be Sony official, designed to work with the Sony board, with a little bit of Sony programming inside the board, so it won't work on anything else, and you have to buy the official chips until an aftermarket place figures it out, contacts it, copies it, and then hacks it all out once they get through all the coding and the firmware. But I suppose if you wanted to upgrade this standard board to a PS4 board, I could always change the USB ports to have a 4-pin or a 4-place USB port at the bottom. But yeah, I just thought I'd see if anybody would be interested in that. You made me a sandwich. Okay, but yeah, I think it'd be quite good, and be part of like right to repair, wouldn't it? So the right to repair, I mean, you could probably sell official PlayStation chips and unofficial PlayStation chips. So instead of buying a brand new console every year, you could literally just buy your RAM, 8 gig of RAM, and they could be at say 51, 152, 253, 400. So it'd be £400 for your RAM, and then say another £100 for your processor, considering you've already bought the console. So that would be another £500. So it's exactly the same as buying a new PlayStation if you had chip inserts that you put in. But that's the same way as a PlayStation would do it, but that might be a bit expensive for the RAM chips, depending on how much the RAM chips cost to develop. So you could do them at £30 each, so 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180, 210, 240, and then another £300 for your processor, or £200 for your processor to keep it cheap. Instead of having to make a brand new console with new plastics, new everything else, you can just literally change the processor and the APU, and you can literally just plug them in. The only problem is how do I get the computer game to support 4K graphics? Is that in the software, or is that in the actual memory of the game, or the actual computer? Because I don't know what the chips are. But anyway, we're going to get into this game of First Direct Descendant. The First Descendant. It looks good. The storyline looks good. I just thought it'd make the console more affordable. But anyway, probably work out £50 cheaper for consumers once you put it in a box. It will still probably cost the same price as a brand new computer console, I suppose. But as you're updating computer consoles like the PS5, obviously the PS5 is going to have a Slim, it's going to have a Pro version, and it's going to have a limited edition version. Limited edition versions should not be able to sell the parts down. No joke. I mean, like, really think about it. You're going to get a 1 terabyte limited edition console that you only make 5,000 of, like they did with the PS4. Then, as a company, they are not going to make any of those things available to be upgradable to the PS4 Pro limited edition or whatever. But for the Slimline and the Pro version, or the Slim for the Slimline and the Pro version, all those things. So for the Slimline, or from the original to the Pro version, all those things should be basically made available via right to repair. Therefore, you can just upgrade it by having a socket that your processor sits in and your RAM sits in. Obviously, you get it discounted if you have bought the original PlayStation and you've kept the receipt, and you bought the original PlayStation from a brand new store. Keep the receipt. There's a code on the bottom that entitles you to the right to repair to buy the chips that you need. It's a nice little gimmick and a good idea, because it saves you buying a new console when something changes, like 8K graphics have just came out, or 12K freaking OLED TVs and that. You want to get the perfect graphics card. I mean, you shouldn't have to go out and buy a new console to be able to enjoy your telly to its fullest potential. You should just be able to upgrade the chipsets and then enjoy what you've upgraded without paying for a full console. Anyway, I'm going to sign off. I'll see you later. Once the game's downloaded, we'll get into it and then we'll see what the game's like. See you later, guys. Oh, I've got to eat